Of all their kings, the Bavarians reserve a special place for Ludwig II. He's known as the Swan King because of the fairy tale palaces he built. Ludwig was popular, good-looking, and rumoured to be homosexual. His sole close friend was his cousin Elizabeth, who later became the Empress of Austria. They gave each other slightly unusual pet names. Elizabeth called Ludwig Eagle, and he called her Dove. The man who came to be known as Mad King Ludwig was born here at the Nymphenburg Palace in Munich. It's probably fair to say that he was a casualty of his royal upbringing. As he grew older, he became more and more aloof. At one point, his father, the king, said, "What's the point in me going for a walk with him? It's not as though he's interested in anything anyone else has to say." When he came to the throne aged 18, Ludwig set about creating a fairy tale kingdom in a modern world. Ludwig found it very difficult to relate to other people, but he really did love horses. Here in his palace, there's over 40 paintings of horses. So far, so royal family. But the really striking thing about Ludwig is that he reimagined himself as a fantasy king, as an ancien régime king like Louis XIV. He commissioned these carriages, which are, well, they're unrestrained at best. I mean, I have to be honest, when I first saw this carriage here, it made me want to be sick. But this is a man in the age of steam and the electric light bulb. Here we have the putty sled, incredible thing, with electric lights and a battery. And you can just imagine him riding down into the mountains in Bavaria, past the various peasantry, all lit up like some gaudy fairy tale. It's not for me. I opt instead for a more modern but functional form of transport, the Munich tram. With his good looks and flamboyant extravagance, Ludwig was a popular figure here in Munich. Apparently people to this day still like him so much they call their sons Ludwig. I wonder if we've just had a load of Ludwigs get on the tram now. There's certainly a few lads who fancy their hairstyle a little bit. Hi. Hi, are you called Ludwig? How many Ludwigs on the tram? We'll never know. But before I delve deeper into Ludwig, Heiner, who's rapidly becoming my guide to a sort of alternative south of Germany, has insisted I come to a laughing yoga class. Laughing yoga is a combination of, you've guessed it, laughing and yoga. It's a 7,000-year-old Indian tradition which has spread like wildfire across Germany. There are as many laughing yoga schools here as there are Anglo-German societies, and maybe sausages. But it seems to me that this is more like a laugh therapy class than yoga. Why are the Germans so into this bizarre phenomenon? Many of the people in this class have undergone some personal trauma, and it's believed that laughing yoga can provide them with healing therapy. It's very peculiar because normally what I normally do is try and generate laughter from people, so I'm very analytical about what's funny and what makes people laugh. But to be in a room where laughter is just being uncorked and tapped into is it feels very primal, and I'm actually having to lose a lot of, I don't know if it's British or personal reservations I have about letting go in front of other people. There are moments where this is like being caught in one of those 60s films where a crowd comes towards you laughing, which is quite frightening, but well, they're having the time of their lives. Well, I don't know what that proves. I don't know if it proves that the Germans have a sense of humour, but it certainly shows they can laugh. That was very, very peculiar, and I'd recommend it to anybody. I'm driving along what's called the Romantic Road now. It's the road to the Bavarian mountains where Ludwig's castles are. It's called the Romantic Road because it's beautiful scenery here and because of the associations with Ludwig and his fairy tale king dream. Of course, you can imagine him now going along in his sled with the electric light on front. I'm making my way in my luxury German vehicle. This is Schloss Linderhof, one of King Ludwig's many palaces and where he spent the final 8 years of his life.
Welcome to Linderhof Castle.
I'm meeting local expert Angela Finley, who's going to show me around. Oh, goodness me. This is the king's bedroom, of course.
Yes, the state bedroom, an exact copy of the bedroom of Louis XIV in Versailles. Yeah, and if you have a look at the bed, you see here, it's king size.
Yeah.
It's the largest room in the castle, 108 square meters, around 850 high. And it's the typical state bedroom, since it was the tradition to receive the guests in the bedroom.
And did he design this himself? Would he do drawings?
Yes, he was actually his own architect. As a matter of fact, all the castles that he designed and built and still had planned were actually his own design. It's really breathtaking.
Yeah. Right, well, show me, what else is there in the house? Show me.
Well, there's so many things. I hope you have time for the next 3 weeks.
Goodness. So this is more Versailles, isn't it? This is a hall of mirrors.
Yes, this is an exact copy of the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles. But, of course, Versailles has a length of 74 meters. And the idea was to put the mirrors up opposite to each other. So if you have a look, you can see infinity.
Oh, yeah.
And you can imagine illuminated. It just looked like in a fairy tale.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's clear to see that Ludwig loved illusions and fairy tales, just like Wagner, whom he sponsored and developed a strong friendship with. And, taking his cue from Wagner, he tried to make being a king a total artwork. But the Romantic Strasse is not only characterised by Ludwig's fairy tale palaces. Being the place in Germany which is closest to Italy, it's also filled with stunning Rococo and Baroque churches. I've come to Ettal, a famous pilgrimage site.
While this is obviously a very holy place, the monks here have a strong tradition of brewing and beer making. There's a custom called March strong beer that comes from the 17th century, when the monks would brew an extra strong beer for Lent, with more alcohol in it for extra sustenance to get them through the Lenten fast. One year they sent the beer to the Pope to get permission to drink it, and during the journey the beer went off. By the time he tasted it, it was so bad, he said the monks could carry on drinking it as a suitable Lenten punishment.
Having seen the stunning marble and gold which decorates Ludwig's palaces and Bavaria's churches, I wonder how on earth the materials travelled across the Alps. These are the people who maintain Bavaria's Rococo and Baroque treasures, and today they are going to let me into a little secret. Much of the marble we see is not real. In fact, it's made of wood. But the technique of making false marble has become so specialised that today it can be more expensive than the real thing. Not long ago, the restorers came across an astonishing find, an architectural feature from history that has seldom been seen. Discovered in a church loft, this is a theatrical set which would grace altars. The windows were blacked out, these glasses were filled with coloured water, and using figures from Christ's Passion, locals played Holy Theatre at Easter. Steeped in Catholic tradition, this became a customary practice in Bavaria. Neuschwanstein is probably the most famous and fantastical of Ludwig's palaces. Built by a theatre set designer rather than an architect, and the inspiration for countless Disney films, including Sleeping Beauty and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. It's not for no reason that kitsch is a German word. Ludwig deliberately situated Neuschwanstein in one of the most remote and beautiful areas of Bavaria. This was to be a chivalric temple built to honour his esteemed Wagner, who Ludwig believed had brought salvation to the world through art.
But his flamboyant reign was to come to a dramatic end. The tide of German politics was turning towards unification, driven by the ambitions of the Prussian Chancellor Bismarck. Bavaria sided with Austria to protect itself, but was defeated in battle by the Prussians. Humiliated, Ludwig had to cede Bavarian sovereignty to the Kaiser. It was then that he began to withdraw from public life and throw himself into his projects. But it was a combination of Bavarian internal politics and Ludwig's spending that was to prove his undoing. In building his palaces, he racked up an enormous debt of 14 million marks. So his ministers decided to act. They commissioned Dr. Gooden, then Germany's leading psychiatrist and a man who'd never met the king, to compile a report proving that he was insane. Every one of Ludwig's idiosyncrasies and a lot of rumour and conjecture were thrown into the report, and Ludwig was forced to step down.
Bismarck doubted the truth of these accounts, but did nothing about it. A report was issued saying that because Ludwig was suffering from such a disorder, freedom of action can no longer be allowed, and your Majesty is declared incapable of ruling, which incapacity of ruling will be not only for a year's duration, but for the length of your Majesty's life. But the conspirators against Ludwig had never met or examined the king. Ludwig asked his accuser, Dr. Gooden, "How can you declare me insane? After all, you've never even examined me before." Ludwig was declared mentally unstable, deposed in 1886, and confined to Schlossberg on the shores of Lake Starnberg. Soon after, he was found drowned.
Well, who are these people behind me, you're wondering? I've been up and down the length of Germany, met all sorts of interesting people and eaten more than my fair share of sausages. But these people are the strangest of the lot. They're the Google-Männer. And they're a secret society whose task, self-appointed task, is to keep alive the memory of King Ludwig II. And more importantly, the idea that he didn't commit suicide, that in fact he was murdered. Their placards read, "Es war Mord," it was murder. I think fittingly for King Ludwig, it's a little bit eccentric. Here on the edge of Lake Starnberg is a cross that marks where King Ludwig died. Whether he was murdered or committed suicide, we'll never know. But he's best remembered as a true eccentric, a romantic man pursuing his dream of being a fairy tale prince. It's little wonder that with the modern age dawning, he wasn't really understood.
It's only really me, but I feel that Ludwig is like the last old German. His death marks the end of Romanticism, and my journey through the fatherland has also come to a close. The story of Germany is one of extremes. I've gone far back in history and discovered a nation of dreamers whose golden age struck Europe like a beam of light. But we give Germany no credit for this because of what happened afterwards, when the dreams changed to dreams of conquest, when German culture, as well as our view of it, was hijacked by the Nazis. Now, more than 60 years later, it's time to return this culture back to Germany and look at the country afresh.